In this tutorial, I'll walk you through the steps of drawing a realistic tree using graphite pencils. But before we dive in, let's cover some fundamentals such as constructing branches with twigs, creating the illusion of foliage, and depicting the texture of bark. So follow this drawing tutorial to learn how to sketch a tree from trunk to branches. You might be surprised at how easy drawing a realistic tree is. You will need the following supplies to create this project: an HB graphite pencil, 3B, 4B, and 6B graphite pencils, an eraser, and drawing paper. In the first part of this tutorial, we're going to learn how to draw a branch. To draw a standard branch, begin by marking its central axis with an HB pencil. This line will serve as the foundation of the branch's structure. Additionally, it is helpful to mark the point where the branch connects to the trunk, as this connection provides stability and support. Step 2. Sketch the outline of the branch, keeping in mind its cylindrical shape. Step 3. Refine the branch's contour by erasing unnecessary lines. Step 4. Add smaller branches of varying lengths and angles. Step 5. Draw thin twigs to add texture to the branches. Step 6. Sketch leaves of various sizes and orientations. Branches are woody structures that extend from the central trunk of a tree. Large branches are referred to as boughs, while the smaller branches are known as twigs or sprigs. Branches exhibit a wide range of shapes and sizes. They can be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal in orientation, although the majority of trees have branches that ascend in an upwardly diagonal direction. Step 7. Create the appearance of bark texture by adding elongated lines and groups of hatch marks. Emphasize the branch's dimensionality by darkening its sides with a softer pencil like a 3B. Enhance the depth of the drawing by adding hatched areas around the leaves using a darker pencil like a 6B. Darken these small twigs under these bushy foliage because they receive less light naturally. We can also have some dry, small twigs without leaves. That's how we find the real trees in nature. For covering more ground, I can use the side of my pencil. And for those leaves that are exposed to more light, I use the tip of the pencil. This way I can create a contrast between the bright side of the foliage and the shadow side. I'm gonna do the same for this part. I'm using my 3B graphite pencil, but a 4B works well too. Generally, the leaves closer to the trunk are going to be darker because they are at the bottom of the branch, and the leaves closer to the crown are going to be lighter. That's how we can create the illusion of light and dark within the foliage. After defining the shadow areas, we can add more texture to the foliage. Draw short broken lines to give the branches some texture and definition. We don't want to leave them with a bunch of cotton or cloud-shaped patterns. I generally used these textures and pencil strokes for drawing this branch. We can play with different values, strokes, or varying pencil pressure. Add some small twigs among the leaves to make them more natural as you're drawing them. I add more leaves to make the foliage look more bushier and elaborate them. How to draw bark. Let's start by drawing a small section of bark up close. Use an HB pencil to draw a small rectangle and fill it with lines that imitate the bark's pattern. Don't worry about making the pattern perfect at this stage. Just try to create something that resembles irregular diamond shapes. Use the HB pencil to add more details to the drawing. Groups of parallel hatches can help create the illusion of a three-dimensional surface. Focus on capturing the pattern and details. Bark is a protective layer that covers the wood of the tree. It's made up of several different tissues that work together to protect the tree from damage. Understanding how to draw bark will make it easier to draw trees later on. It's a fundamental part of the tree anatomy, and it can help you create realistic and detailed drawings. Use the 4B graphite pencil to darken the borders between the sections of bark. You can also add dots to create a more interesting texture. Use the 3B graphite pencil again to decrease the contrast by covering the sample with a layer of soft, smooth hatching. Then go back and accentuate the shadows once again. You can also add patches of moss and cover them with a layer of hatching. Add more details with dots and short hatches using the 3B or 4B pencil. And our sample is complete. Now we're ready to draw the whole tree. Lightly sketch the basic shape of the trunk first. Add the core line and mark the foundation of the tree. A tree usually has a wide foundation and a thin top. I'm adding contour lines here to show you the roundness of the trunk. Then let's construct the shape of the tree. Add main branches expanding from the main trunk. Draw cylindrical shapes over your basic lines to cover some parts of the trunk and fill out main branches for a more 3D look. Typically with branches, you'll find that the tree trunk is thicker and there's a tapering that happens as you move further into the branches of the tree. Usually we start light, then we can add layers of details later. To construct the placement of these bushy branches, I like to draw circles like this to know how the shape of my tree is going to be. Your placement will help suggest and bring definition to the shape without overdrawing the pattern. So create the segments of the shape and join them together. Erase the guidelines and refine the contours. Then gradually deepen lines for definition. This allows flexibility to tweak the drawing as you build it up. It's important to vary your line weight in the trunk as well. In their most basic shape, trees are cylindrical forms and leaves on the branches seem more circular from a distance. So at this step, start out with a few leading lines and circles to indicate the general shape, and then in the next step, guide the direction of the branches. Sketch a rough outline for the foliage of your tree, also called the tree crown. Work on the shapes of the branches and leaves. They differ in size and direction. Focus on simplicity and avoid over-detailing branches and leaves at first. That can make the drawing look busy, so build it up slowly in layers instead. It's always helpful to look at real trees to understand how the branches work. When it comes to the natural objects, small imperfections are great. You can add the smaller branches and twigs as you're working on the branches and foliage. Since we're drawing a whole tree, there's no point in representing every single leaf. Add rough shapes of the leaves just to the lower branches and the bounds of the crown. Shade your tree to give it dimension and separate the shadow areas from the light areas. Typically, boughs closer to the trunk will be in shadow, while boughs at the top of the tree will be more exposed to light. You can also fill in your shading and highlights with a light source in mind for more directional detail work. If you're not sure you're achieving enough contrast, squint your eyes and look at your sketch. It's important to keep the shapes sketchy. Too many details will make your drawing look weird and unnatural. So let's create an illusion of foliage. An easy way to draw masses of leaves is to fill the crown with the scribble lines. We learned these shading techniques in the previous tutorials. You can check the link above to find that tutorial. Fill in branches with foliage and leaves. With the 4B or 5E pencil, cover the area of the crown with the scribble-like lines, leaving some areas lighter and darkening the underside of the crown. As mentioned, you don't necessarily have to draw individual leaves for your tree to look realistic. Be sure to vary the weight of your strokes as you go. You can switch up the weight and thickness of your strokes. I switch my pencil from a B to a 5B and then maybe a 7B for darker areas. Leave a small twigs among the leaves a little lighter so that they won't merge with the foliage. I'm exactly using the same shading techniques and textures I used for drawing the branch in the previous step. So gradually add texture and different strokes to create the illusion of foliage on the branches. With the 3B pencil, darken the foliage, accentuating the lower part of the crown. The goal here is to achieve a contrasting yet harmonious look. It's time to work on the trunk. It usually is darker than the foliage, so having the right contrast is vital. With the HB pencil, draw the rough pattern of the bark and mark the core shadows. Darken the edges and outer borders of the trunk. Please note that we see this pattern from a distance, so having much detail here won't be a help. With the 3B pencil, increase the contrast in the drawing. Feel free to make the sides of the tree and the visible parts of the branches really dark. Capture the surroundings also, not just the tree. Add grass, rocks, fences, whatever exists near the tree in real life. This plant set in a realistic scene. So complete the drawing by adding some grass near the base of the trunk. Add contrast to the surroundings by using vertical lines. Show the background with lighter values. This lighter value makes the background elements look farther. Add any finishing touches to the trunk, foliage, or surrounding ground. And your tree is complete. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Bye till next one.